Welcome back, Be Good community. Today, I want to talk about something that seems very simple, but is oftentimes overlooked by school leadership. And it was something that I ended up practicing accidentally, but then realized how important it was the more and more I interviewed students and talked to them. And I want to talk a little bit first about when I was a school principal and was hiring for an assistant principal. And in that hiring process, I always had a student committee. So there was a hiring panel that were teachers. There was the hiring panel that would work in the office with the administrator. And then there was also a panel that I had of students who would be involved in interviewing our administrator who would come in. And it was interesting to me is that throughout those panels, the first time that I had one, asked the students, what were things that were important to you in a principal or an administrator? And it was interesting that the first thing the students said was approachability and visibility. And I think that many administrators take that for granted, that they don't realize how important it is that a school leader is entrusted with more than just administrative responsibilities of running a school or just evaluating teachers, or some think that putting out fires, running drills, these kinds of things. And it's important that while it's important to be a teacher-centered leader in terms of being interested in supporting teachers, their professional development, and everything else, there are a host of behaviors that also make you a student-centered administrator, but they're not necessarily what has been defined as being student-centered. And I'll say right now that many times when I worked with administrators, spoken with administrators, when they talk about being student-centered or all about the kids, oftentimes it's used in reference to just making decisions that other people don't like and or skipping over feedback from adults in the building to say that we're doing this thing for kids. But so often when working with these people and seeing, how do actual kids feel being in your school, they very rarely feel that their administrators are student-centered. They don't feel that because being student-centered, a student-centered administrator, a student-centered leader, that's more about your behavior with the kids than it is about any decisions you make about curriculum or any decisions you make about different paperwork or different things that you think a teacher should do. And I want to talk about that because over and over again, and I looked into this across cultures, across places, students, when they talk about administrators that make a difference for them, administrators that create environments they want to go to school in, they talk over and over again. Number one factor is approachability. And I've worked with administrators since then who are like, well, I'm not, I don't know, that's not my style. I don't do that, or, I'm not so comfortable. There's some very simple things that you can do, right? Because it doesn't really matter. As a leader, you have your personality, and some of that will come to fore. That'll come out either way. And your personality is going to come out regardless of the practice or behavior you do. Me and you can actually do the same thing. We can try the same behavior, but the way that it's manifested in the world is going to be different depending on your personality. So it's not about losing your personality. There are tactics that we all can use, and of course, they'll manifest in different ways. There are only so many notes in music. However, there's endless variety, right? So students notice when we're present. It's very easy to notice. I mean, whenever you're in an authority position, the people in authority are always viewed and seen much quicker than the people who are lower on the totem pole. This is part of human psychology. The students are much more aware when the teacher walks in the room than they are of any other particular student. If I walk into a cafeteria, it goes around pretty quickly that the principal or school leader is in the cafeteria, right? So they notice that not just when we're not in our offices or behind desks or closed doors, but when we're out in the hallways and attending school events. And students do notice when they don't see you, when you're never around. And yes, they notice us in the classrooms as well. But showing up, being around the students and being visible to them is an indication that where they are and what's happening with them matters to you. I spoke to a gathering of students in a school that I used to work in and asked them about how things were going. And many of the students were saying, well, just the administration it's a little bit tough on us. I don't know. And I was asking, well, why is it, what's tough about it, And when they were explaining things, they started talking about first, of course, consequences of particular actions, different rules, school rules, and those kind of things. But they weren't different from school rules that were around when I had been in the school. And so I said, but that hasn't changed very much. I mean, what else is there? And they said, well, we never see them. We never see the administrators. The only time we see the administrators is when we're in trouble. And I think that is a huge thing. And it's not just about seeing you walk around. It's about being in the hallway. It's about having small interactions with school leaders. When you who are a position of authority, students have to also know that you're there in support, not just there for managing them, evaluating them, or dishing out consequences. And so I want to talk a little bit about how do you build trust with students who you don't see every day in the classroom, because I think that's one of the things is many of us who are school leaders used to be teachers, and teachers, we see the kids every day. So eventually, hopefully, those bonds are built. Trust is built through the day-to-day interaction. But how do you do it as an administrator who doesn't see all the kids every day? Approachability impacts students because it's easy to get lost in administrative tasks, right? That come to us all the time as a school leader. There's meetings, there's paperwork, there's reports, there's the latest fire to put out, a parent wants to talk to you, a teacher wants to talk to you, all these kinds of things. But we have to remember to make time to be accessible to students. And small interactions matter. So, when we take a moment to greet students in the morning, so this is one of the easiest ones, is that just to be around when students are coming into school, to be in front of the school, to ask how their day is going. Simply check in. One of my favorite things used to be just making sure I was in the hallways during passing times for some of the older kids. Or when there was a time where I knew the students would be out and about, I wanted to try to just make, 3 to 5 minute journey out there and just be around. And what happens is that when you say, hello, how are you doing to a kid? When you just ask them, well, how are things going? What's going on? And be genuinely interested. It's not just that kid you're impacting. It's also the kids who see you interacting with other kids, right? Because so many of our judgments about people are not actually about the interactions we had with them. It's the interactions that we see them having with other people and what we hear about them. So the more stories that go out about you about how much you listened to a kid, how much you allowed yourself to just take some time to hear from them, right? It tells them that I'm here for you. It tells them that, man, I have time to listen to you. Because really, the kids don't believe that an administrator needs to take the time to talk to them. They don't believe that an administrator is inclined to. The administrator just talks at them. But if you can make the time to talk to kids, this is important. Big gathering place we had at the school I worked with was the school gym. Kids would come in there, they'd sit around. Some of them would be playing volleyball in the morning, some of them playing basketball, but a lot of kids just sitting around talking. I would make sure every morning I was circulating around there, saying hi to kids, little fist bump here, asking how you're doing there. But every single morning I'd be out there. That was part of my thing, to just talk to kids. I also made sure that during lunchtimes, if I could be available during lunchtime, help a teacher out or take a teacher's lunch duty and say, hey, go to your class, I'll have your lunch duty for right now, and do that. That helped quite a bit because I could be there not just to enforce rules, but I could be there to talk to kids, to say hello, how are you, what's going on with you. Emotional availability is important as well. And that's something that we build by speaking with students, right? So a student who feels comfortable approaching their principal with a problem or concern is more likely to feel supported in general in the school. And so when we take the time to listen to students' concerns and just engage in a casual conversation, right? I think that's another thing is, well, what do I talk to the kid about? One of my administrators who I worked with for quite a while, I just said, hey, just ask the kid how you're doing. Tell them something that you're thinking about. Ask them what they're interested in. What's good about the day? What's challenging right now? Ask them some questions, see if they respond, and continue getting to know them. And when you do that, you create space because the students know they can talk to you. The students know you're interested in talking to them. And so that in itself also creates this emotional availability that students feel there's support, not just in my friend group, but from the school leadership. And none of this means that you had to change policies or not enforce policies or anything like that. No, not at all. It just means that this person is another person who cares and is an integral part to a positive school climate. So now there's a balance in leadership, right? And that's what I was talking a little bit about before, is that you don't need to be everywhere all the time, right? Students know that there's demands for your role. So they're not expecting you to be everywhere all the time. So I'm not also saying, people are like, well, I'm very busy. We're all very busy. What I'm saying is that we can make time and carve out some time each day, whether it's greeting students in the morning, attending an event in the evening, or simply checking in to a few students during lunch. These are all ways in which we increase our availability to students and our visibility and our approachability, right? When we take a little time each day. And so I would say right now, if you wanted to an actionable step, if you don't have 10 to 15 minutes in your calendar every day that is just marked out for simply being visible to students, answering their questions, then you should put it in there. Put that in there so that every single day, mark out that time early. Put it on your calendar early so that nothing, unless it's a real emergency, nothing actually interferes with that. Be in the cafeteria. Be outside before school. Be where most of the kids are congregating. Make sure a couple of different passing periods in the day, you're in there with them. This applies in elementary, it applies in middle school, it applies all across the board. Let students see you and let students see that you're interested in them. And of course, approaching and going to after-school activities, all those kinds of things is another way of doing that. Not only do you increase your visibility and approachability with students, but you also do it with parents that way as well. So to close out, I just want to reaffirm the importance. Whether it's a quick meeting, a brief chat, just being present at a school event, those actions matter. They create a culture where trust is built, where students feel safe, and where they know that they're valued by the leadership of the school, not just by the teachers they see every day, but even though we're not around every day as school leaders, they know that they are valued. They know that there is an interest, and that interest and the actual amount of not just capital that you gain with the students, the amount you learn about the students will build your caring, will build your even your decision-making, because you'll also hear things. You'll gain wisdom. You'll gain perspective from these kids who you are approachable to. Give it a shot and be good. If you like that video, be sure to visit our website at begoodleadership.org, where you will find resources for every type of educational professional there is. Learn how to teach better, learn how to lead better, and to cement stronger relationships. Be Good Leadership, where we're building school communities that focus on performance as well as deep humanity. Please be sure to check out so many free resources that we have for you. Sign up for our newsletter and be good.